Hi, I'm Kieran. My sister stole over $11,000 from my bank account, and my parents called it love. Not theft, not betrayal, just family. But when I found out, I didn't yell. I handed them a rent invoice for the house they tried to erase me from. Sounds cold? Maybe. But tell me this. What would you do if silence was the only thing they ever gave you? Have you ever been treated like a backup plan by your own family? Ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace and lost yourself in the process? What time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I want to know who's really out there, and if you felt this too. The snow hadn't melted on the porch steps, not even where feet had surely stepped the day before. That alone told me what I needed to know. This house didn't wait for anyone, not even me. Aries wind had always carried a kind of weight with it, but that afternoon it felt personal, like it was trying to push me back toward the airport. I stood there longer than I should have, suitcase handle imprinting into my palm. The wind chime, a gift I'd mailed them last Christmas, spun lazily, its sound hollow, unfamiliar. I had to ring the bell twice. Vera opened the door with the kind of smile that made you feel like a surprise guest instead of a daughter. Her arms spread wide, perfume already too much, eyes darting behind me like she expected someone else. "Look at you," she said, as if I had appeared out of thin air and not from a plane I'd paid for myself. Reed was still in his recliner. "Hey, kiddo," he called, not looking up from the television. News anchors murmured in the background. Lana stepped out with a glass of iced tea like it was mid-July, not early winter. "You look tan," she said, and then sipped without another word. Dinner came fast. We sat around the same oval table that once held birthday cakes and PTA flyers. It looked smaller now. Vera raised her glass, eyes glistening, not from emotion but wine. "Even when you're not here, the house stays bright," she said. Lana laughed. Reed chuckled. I smiled on reflex, but something in my stomach twisted. That sentence, so light, landed like frostbite. No one noticed how I stopped chewing. No one noticed at all. The next morning, I wandered through the living room, hands trailing the backs of old furniture. The shelf where our family photos lived looked rearranged. I searched for the frame, me and Lana at the county fair, cotton candy in one hand, matching freckles. Gone. In its place was a sleek photo of Vera and Lana on a beach I'd never been invited to. Center shelf, no second frame, just replaced. I stared for a long time. No one mentioned the change. No one apologized. I backed away slowly, as if I might knock something over just by existing too close to it. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. The house had already done the talking. I found myself in what used to be my room. It smelled of cedar and something older. Maybe dust, or maybe a memory. Boxes lined the walls. The bed I used to crawl into after nightmares was covered in wrapping paper and mismatched storage bins. I sat down carefully, as if I might break what little of myself still belonged there. Was I ever meant to stay? I whispered aloud. The question vanished into the silence like breath on glass. A knock came soft on the doorframe. Lana peeked in. "Glad you're here," she said, smiling that unbothered smile. Then, almost as an afterthought, "You'll sleep in the guest room, though. Mine's full." I nodded. Of course it was. As she disappeared down the hallway, I reached for my phone. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe a reason to leave. Maybe a way to survive the next 3 days. The morning after that dinner felt muted, like the house had swallowed whatever tension was left hanging in the air. Outside, snowflakes drifted past the window, soft and slow, like they had all the time in the world to land. I sat alone at the kitchen table, hands curled around a mug that wasn't mine. The coffee was bitter, untouched since Reed poured it 2 hours ago and left without a word. The silence wasn't awkward, it was rehearsed. Lana floated in like nothing was wrong, like we hadn't shared a room full of ghosts the night before. She wore a hoodie 3 sizes too big and held her phone with the same concentration you'd give a crossword puzzle. "Hey," she said, with the kind of fake morning cheer only someone guilty could master. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded without looking up. "What's that app you use again? The banking one? You always said it was more secure." I blinked. "Which one?" She shrugged. "Whichever one you use to check stuff. I'm trying to set something up and mine's acting weird." I unlocked my phone and slid it across the table before I had time to think. She tapped around, smiled faintly, and handed it back. "Thanks," she said, voice light. "Yours is way faster." 2 minutes, maybe less. No alarms in my gut. Just a faint ripple of discomfort I ignored, because that's what I was trained to do in this house. Ignore the small things until they became undeniable. Later that afternoon, I picked up my phone again. It felt different in my hand, like someone else had touched it, but I couldn't prove it. My settings were the same. No weird texts, no new notifications, nothing obvious. But that ripple from earlier had grown teeth. I found myself checking the banking app without really thinking. Just muscle memory. I wasn't expecting anything. That's what made it worse. My balance was wrong. Not a glitch, not a pending charge, not an overdraft. $11,300. Gone. Transferred. One move, one destination. No name, just a string of numbers. Local account, no flags, no alerts. Clean. I didn't move. I didn't blink. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat and just sat there. My fingers moved before my brain did. I pulled up the activity log. Time-stamped. Right after breakfast. Right after the phone exchange. I saw her face again, smiling like this house was her playground and I was the sister foolish enough to bring my toys. I wanted to scream, but all I did was sit there, letting it sink in like snow through cloth. Quiet, cold. I didn't cry. I'd cried over less. But this didn't deserve tears. It deserved clarity, and I had it now. I stood, walked back to the guest room, closed the door behind me. No one noticed. Of course they didn't. I put my phone on airplane mode, like that would stop the theft from feeling real. It didn't. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Then I picked up my notebook and flipped past the pages where I'd sketched out client notes and grocery lists and fleeting thoughts that never turned into poems. I started a new page, and at the top, in block letters, I wrote, "If they ask why." The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and the kind of coffee that had been reheated too many times. Outside, the snow didn't fall. It hovered, like it was waiting for permission. Inside, Lana and Vera talked like they were in the middle of a cozy morning sitcom. I didn't recognize the episode. I sat down without a word. Reed rustled the newspaper in the living room but didn't look up. It was the same sound he made when I got my first job offer, and he didn't want to say congratulations. Familiar, in its own hollow way. I reached for the navy blue mug on the counter. The one with the chipped rim and the tiny scratch near the handle. The one I bought for Vera after I graduated college. The one I thought might make her think of me every morning she poured her first cup. Vera's hand brushed mine gently, almost out of reflex. "Use the white one, sweetie," she said, already pouring coffee into a mug I didn't recognize. "I already filled it." The blue one sat in front of Lana, steam curling into her face like it belonged there. She didn't look up. I took the white mug without a word, sipped, burnt, bitter. It wasn't about the taste. No one noticed the pause. No one asked if I wanted the blue one, and no one apologized. Not for the mug, not for anything. That was the part that ached the most. I drank quietly, each swallow heavier than the last. I remembered wrapping that blue mug in gold tissue paper, adding a sticky note that said, "Something to remind you I still exist." No one had laughed at the joke back then either. Later I wandered through the hallway. Vera had polished the shelves. Family china gleamed under the soft hallway light. Lana's baby cup was front and center, alongside her spelling bee ribbons and a small ballerina figurine I'd forgotten existed. Mine were gone. Not boxed, not tucked behind. Gone. No photos of me in the graduation robe she insisted I wear. No framed drawings from the second grade she once said she'd never part with. The shelf had been curated with care. Not negligence, intention. My erasure was deliberate. I walked back to the guest room, closed the door slowly, like I didn't want it to hear me. Sat on the edge of the bed. The mug still sat on the nightstand, white, anonymous, impersonal. I opened my notebook and flipped back to the page I started the night before. Under "If they ask why," I added, the cup, the shelf, the silence that never got broken. I stared at the words until they stopped feeling like mine. Then I heard it, floorboards creaking. Reed walked past the door, He didn't knock, didn't pause for more than a second, just kept walking. I looked at the white mug again, and something inside me finally settled. This house is no longer mine. The house felt quieter after breakfast, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that follows something dropped and broken, carefully ignored, carefully stepped around. I walked down the hallway, hands brushing against wallpaper I hadn't looked at in years. The light was gray, filtered through cold windows, and everything smelled faintly of furniture polish and old wood. I turned the corner toward the small room that used to be Nana Eleanor's sanctuary. She'd called it her reading nook, though I only ever saw her sitting there in silence, eyes closed, her hands resting on her lap like she was remembering something she hadn't shared. The door creaked when I pushed it open. It still smelled like her. Faint lavender and dust, laced with something warmer, like dried tea leaves and a forgotten fire. The dresser in the corner had 3 drawers. I went straight for the bottom one. It wasn't locked. It never had been. Inside, there was nothing. The velvet pouch was gone. The necklace was gone. That locket, delicate and worn at the edges, had been mine since I was 15. Nana had pressed it into my hand with shaking fingers, whispered, "They'll take everything, but don't let them take this." At the time, I'd smiled and told her not to be so dramatic. She'd nodded, eyes soft, like she already knew I wouldn't listen. Now, the air in the room felt too still, the drawer too empty. That night at dinner, I asked it casually, like I was wondering about the weather. "Did anyone move Nana's things? I noticed her drawer looked emptier than I remember." Lana paused, just a second too long, just enough to catch it. "I think Mom cleared it when we cleaned last month," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe it got tossed?" Vera didn't look at me either. She adjusted her napkin. "I don't remember, sweetheart. We've gone through so much stuff lately." I nodded. My fork stayed still on my plate. I didn't need to say anything. Lana looked away first, suddenly fascinated by her mashed potatoes. Reed didn't even glance up, just reached for the salt. Back in the guest room, I opened my notebook and flipped past yesterday's list, started a new line beneath, "If they ask why." The locket. She said they take everything. She was right. I stared at the words, then closed the notebook without rereading them. The weight of being wrong hurts, but the weight of being warned and proving someone else right, that digs deeper. I opened my phone. My account balance hadn't changed, but I noticed something else now. A login attempt from 2 days ago. Same app, same device, same location. Eerie. I locked the screen and set it on the nightstand next to the white mug. "They didn't just take a necklace," I said quietly. The kitchen smelled like scorched toast and quiet guilt. I came down later than usual. Vera was already at the stove, humming something off-key. Lana sat at the table, scrolling through her phone like she'd never stolen a thing in her life. No one mentioned the necklace. No one mentioned the day before. It was eerie how quickly this house could reset itself. "Morning," I said, just to break the spell. "Morning, sweetheart," Vera chirped without turning around. She set a plate in front of me. Eggs overcooked, toast too dark. Lana smirked at something on her screen. I sat down, hands resting in my lap before picking up a fork I didn't really want to use. Over her coffee, Vera smiled and said, "You always had more, sweetie. It's okay if Lana needs a little help now." I didn't respond, not right away. Lana didn't look surprised. That was the part that stung, the expectation of it, like she knew the script better than I did. I set the fork down. "More of what?" I asked, voice low. Vera blinked. "You know what I mean." "No," I said. "Say it. You mean money. You mean I'm supposed to buy silence and call it love." Reed walked in mid-sentence, holding his mug like a shield. He didn't sit, didn't speak, just stood there, watching like a man caught between a fire and the person who lit it. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Do you remember when you asked me for help with the second mortgage? You said it was temporary." Vera froze. Lana looked up, confused. "I paid it off. You never brought it up again." "It was for the house," Vera said quickly. "For everyone." "No," I corrected her, voice steady. "It was your debt. I paid it. And you never said thank you." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was pointed. Vera stood abruptly, muttering something about needing to check the laundry. She disappeared down the hallway like she could outrun what I'd just said. Lana glanced up. "Why are you digging all this up?" I looked at her, really looked at her. "Because it's been buried for years." My hands were trembling, but I didn't fold them into my lap. I didn't apologize. I just let the tremor pass through me. Reed remained by the doorway, eyes unreadable. I realized something then. His silence wasn't confusion. It was convenience. He didn't want to pick a side because he never had to. Silence isn't neutrality, it's protection. Of the one who shouts the loudest. And that's never been me. That night I pulled my notebook from my bag. The list was getting longer, darker. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "Debt unspoken doesn't disappear, it compounds." I left it open on the nightstand, beside my phone. I stared at both until the ceiling became more comforting than the truth. The next morning, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in over 5 years. "Milo?" I said when he answered. "I was wondering when you'd call." Evening settled over the house like a breath held too long. Somewhere in the living room, Vera's laughter rang out, just slightly too loud. Lana's voice followed, light, rehearsed. It sounded like relief or maybe denial. Reed had gone out again, no explanation. I didn't ask. I sat in the guest room, the glow of my laptop soft against the dim lamp beside me. Every file had been double-checked, every timestamp verified. Milo had called it airtight. I didn't feel powerful, just finished. The printer whirred, slow and deliberate, spitting out page after page until the folder was full. When the final sheet slid into the tray, I closed the lid, picked it all up, and walked down the hall. They didn't notice me at first. Vera sat with her legs crossed, a wine glass in hand. Lana curled up on the couch, scrolling, pretending to be too busy to care. I placed the folder in the center of the coffee table. Vera looked at it like it was a spider. "That's the beginning," I said. "I can deliver the rest to a judge if I need to." Lana scoffed. "What are you even talking about?" I didn't answer her. I looked at Vera instead. "You accessed my account. That's theft. You moved Nana's necklace. That's inheritance tampering." I took a breath. "Let it settle. I'm done playing the quiet one." Lana laughed, dry and brittle. "You're so dramatic." Vera, ever the mediator, shook her head. "You don't need to threaten us. We're family." "Exactly," I said. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward them. On it, a shared folder, highlighted in yellow. Inside, evidence, names, transactions, screenshots. Milo had been thorough. "You didn't just do this to me," I said. "Tyler, that account you set up in his name, Toby's fingerprints are all over it." Lana's face went pale. "You've made a habit of stealing from people who trusted you." Vera gasped, hand flying to her chest like I'd struck her. Reed stood in the doorway now, his eyes darted to the screen, then to me. "We should call someone," he said, voice almost inaudible. I didn't gloat, didn't smile. I just felt steady. Vera leaned forward. She was desperate. We all were. And I wasn't worth asking? My voice cracked at the edge, but I held it. That was the part that always cut the deepest. Not that they took, but that they didn't think I deserved the decency of a conversation. Reed stepped closer, resting one hand on the folder. "Do what you need to do." The silence after that wasn't relief. It was a shift. Vera sat down slowly, as if her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Lana stood up too fast, knocking her phone off the arm of the couch. She didn't pick it up. She left the room without a word. And for the first time in my life, I walked away without needing anyone to follow. That night, back in my room, I received a single text from Milo. "Next move is yours. Let me know if I file." I stared at the message. Then I opened my notebook, turned to the page beneath "If they ask why," and wrote a new word in capital letters: control. The house no longer even pretended to be warm. No music, no clinking of dishes, just the soft buzz of the refrigerator and the creak of floorboards beneath my steps. I moved through the morning like someone walking through a museum of the life they weren't invited to finish. Vera stood by the sink, rinsing something that didn't need rinsing. Reed had vanished again, probably wandering a grocery aisle, looking for anything but conflict. Lana's door remained shut. The tension sat between the walls like thick dust. undisturbed but always there. In the hallway bathroom, taped to the mirror above the sink, was a folded note. You can take the money, the house, even Mom's attention, but you won't get me back. You never will. Lana. I read it once, then again. Not angry. Just tired. She still thought this was about her, about winning or losing her, like she had ever been mine to lose. I peeled it from the mirror, folded it twice, and slid it between the pages of my notebook, back to the section labeled Control. I added a line beneath the others. She was never mine to lose. That was the difference now. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the record to reflect the truth. That afternoon, Vera found me sitting in the kitchen, notebook closed beside me. She leaned against the doorframe like she wasn't sure she had permission to enter her own story. Lana's fragile, she said, testing the words. You've always been stronger. I didn't look up. My chest tightened. That line, how many times had it been used to excuse, to shift the weight? A memory snapped into place like it had been waiting. Me, age 10, sweeping up glass from a broken vase. Lana crying, Vera rubbing her back. She's younger, she's soft. And me? I was the safe place to set the blame. And I've been paying for being strong ever since, I said quietly. Vera's mouth opened, closed. She sat down across from me like her bones had finally remembered their age. I don't know what to say anymore, she whispered. I met her eyes for the first time in days. Then maybe don't say anything, just listen. The silence that followed didn't hurt. It felt earned, like something that had been clawed toward after years of drowning in too many words that meant too little. That evening, I walked past the living room and saw Reed on the couch, the TV flickering in front of him. He didn't react when I entered. You knew, I said. No need to elaborate. He didn't look at me, just nodded. I thought it was better not to get involved. It never was. That was the last thing we said to each other. Later that night, I stepped outside into the snow. It was still falling, soft and soundless. I didn't bring my phone. Didn't need Milo or any reminders. I just walked, letting the cold sting my cheeks until I could feel the edges of myself again. When I returned, I paused at the front door. Almost done, I whispered to no one. The quiet wasn't gentle anymore. It had hardened into something else. An echo stretched thin across the walls, refusing to break. I folded my clothes with practiced precision, not because I was in a hurry, but because it gave my hands something to do. The zipper on my suitcase caught twice before closing. The snow outside had thickened, erasing the driveway, the mailbox, the front path. I imagined walking through it barefoot, just to feel something real. I sat on the edge of the bed and reopened the bank statement for the last time. $11,300. Moved at 9:14 a.m. same morning. Lana borrowed my phone for just a second. I highlighted the timestamp with my finger, then took a screenshot and forwarded it to Milo. Subject, proceed. That was all I wrote. There was no decision left to make. On the guest bed were 2 envelopes, one addressed in Vera's looping cursive, the other, Lana's tight, dramatic lettering. I didn't open either. I dropped both into my bag like old receipts, proof of something I didn't owe anymore. I would carry the weight, but I didn't have to let it seep in. In the kitchen, Vera stood at the sink, staring out the window as if the snow might deliver absolution. I don't expect you to forgive, she said quietly. Just understand. I nodded, took a slow breath. I did understand. That's why I'm leaving. She didn't answer. We'd run out of language. An hour later, I pulled onto the highway, heading nowhere in particular. The trees blurred into white as I drove, each mile folding behind me like closing pages. Then my phone buzzed. One voicemail, from Vera. I didn't want to listen, but I did. Her voice thin and breaking in the middle. We thought you'd be fine. You always were. We didn't think it would matter. What we took. You always bounce back. We should have asked. It ended with static. I parked on the shoulder of a side road, engine humming low. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I just gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened and my breath came back into my body like a whisper. An hour later, I arrived at a small Airbnb 2 towns over. Neutral walls, clean linens, a nightstand with no memories. I unpacked slowly, folded my clothes into a drawer that didn't know me. I opened my notebook, flipped past every scribbled hurt and sharpened line. The last page was blank. I wrote, "They never drew blood." But I stopped breathing for a while. I closed the cover, set it gently beside the lamp. "Rent's due," I whispered. The morning light inside the Airbnb was soft, almost clinical. No smell of burnt toast, no rusted heating vents, no memory pressing against the walls. Just stillness, just mine. I boiled water for coffee and poured it into the thick, plain mug the host left on the counter. It had no history, no initials carved into the bottom, no chipped rim from childhood arguments. It didn't belong to anyone but me. Snow dusted the railing outside the window, untouched. I stared out for a moment, then opened my laptop. There it was. Subject, payment confirmation, monthly rent, $1,175. The sender, my parents. I read the line twice, 3 times. The words didn't sting. They didn't soothe either. They just were. Rent. From the house I grew up in, paid back to me. On paper, it looked like I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like severance, like something had been amputated cleanly, with no blood, but still left a limp. I walked to the mirror above the dresser, placed my palm gently on the glass. My reflection looked steadier than I felt. "It's done," I whispered. My phone buzzed with a text from Milo. "They're quiet. Nothing from their side since." I didn't reply, but in my mind I saw it. Vera walking out to the mailbox every day with her breath half held. Lana working double shifts at that garden supply store. Reed, silent at the dinner table again, pushing peas around his plate while pretending not to see the cracks spreading beneath their feet. The rent was paid, but the cost wasn't. The necklace was still missing. The graduation photo was still replaced, but I had my dignity. Somehow, I had managed not to trade that away. I printed the receipt and slid it into the back pocket of my notebook, right beneath the page where I'd once written, "They'll take everything." Underneath it now, I added, "Not this." That afternoon, I reopened the old voicemail from Vera, played it through one last time. Her voice was thin, like it was cracking under weight she'd finally begun to feel. "We should have asked," she'd said. I recorded my own voice into the phone. "Yes," I whispered, "you should have." And then I deleted the file, not out of mercy, out of completion. That evening, I bundled up and walked under a sky layered in falling snow. No direction, no plan. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A few houses ahead, a small cottage had a for rent sign out front. I stopped. Just stood there, letting the snow touch my coat and melt. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Maybe some spaces deserve to start with silence, too. Sometimes, walking away is the loudest thing you can do. I didn't need to slam the door. I didn't need revenge dressed in fire. All I needed was distance, and the decision to choose myself after years of being chosen last. If you've ever been the strong one, the reliable one, the invisible one, I hope this story reminds you that strength doesn't mean silence, that setting boundaries isn't betrayal, that peace is something you don't need permission to pursue. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Have you ever had to walk away from people you love just to love yourself better? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every one of them. And hey, if this video resonated with you, if something in it echoed your own experience, let me know by commenting with a 1, or just tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't connect with you, that's okay too. Let me know why. What would you change? What would you keep? If you want more stories like this, raw, real, and maybe a little too close to home, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more coming. And maybe, just maybe, the next one will feel like it was written just for you.